Hey everyone, Token Dave over here. Dorky Token Black guy who's just trying to get by. 12 Years a Slave. Movie that has universal acclaim. Known for displaying the graphic or the harsh nature and the evils of slavery in the United States. This movie was universally acclaimed, won Best Picture, and is known for making Chiwetel Ejiofor and Lupita Nyong'o household names, as well as basically giving the whole world or the mainstream audience a better introduction to Benedict Cumberbatch. Well, with Benedict Cumberbatch, it's an additional introduction, and as well as also not only mainstreaming him, but also making Michael Fassbender a lot more mainstream. And this movie, tug at the hearts of a lot of people and, really expose people to, like I said, the harsh graphic nature of the United States of American sin, and is a important historical piece for African Americans, and it's a movie that I have yet to see. Now, before y'all judge me, let me explain. You see, when people were telling me the movie 12 Years a Slave, I was like, kind of sounds familiar. And then when people told me what the movie was about, I was like, oh, yeah, I already know this story. I already saw this movie. And then they said, well, yeah, wait, how did you already see the movie when we just told you what it was about? And the reason is because not only I did not learn this from any history classes in school, like they would teach this in public school, let alone how education is in other regions of the country where they're saying slaves were just like underpaid workers. I'm looking at you, Texas. Anyway, long story short, basically, I knew of this story not from education, but from an original movie, actually. The 1984 movie that was released in American Playhouse on PBS called Solomon Northup's Odyssey, which is the movie that I'm going to be reviewing to kick off the start of Black History Month. So, for those that don't know, basically, Solomon Northup is a Saratoga Springs African-American male whom is a free man. And he makes his living as a fiddler, which is actually his passion. However, work is coming hard for him and his wife and his 3 kids. They're going to another area where his wife could work in the kitchen. And Solomon is approached by 2 men who convince him to play the fiddle somewhere in Washington, D.C. However, these 2 people are actually con men who actually drug Solomon and basically sell him and kidnap him to be sold into slavery, which he actually becomes a slave in Louisiana, and the story is basically his journey to try to get himself to be freed. So, now, like I said, I have not seen 12 Years a Slave, but Solomon Northup's Odyssey, the actual TV-made movie, was actually pretty groundbreaking. First off, we got the awesome direction of Gordon Parks. Who's Gordon Parks, you might ask? Well, he directed a little movie that was claimed to have put the blaxploitation films mainstream called Shaft. Yes, he was a director of the original movie Shaft, which I will be talking about sometime in the very near future. Anywho, so we have awesome direction. We have an awesome director, but we actually have a decent cast here. First off, playing Solomon Northup, or his slave name as Platt, we have the awesome, yet underrated character actor of Avery Brooks. Now, most of you might not even know that name unless you're a Star Trek fan, but basically Avery Brooks, is mainly known as playing Commander Sisko, or later that became Captain Sisko, in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. However, another notable role that he is known for was in American History X as a teacher. And he plays the titular character of Solomon Northup, aka Platt. In addition to him, we also have John Saxon, who plays Epps. You guys should know who John Saxon is. You know, Roper from Enter the Dragon, Nancy's father, Nightmare on Elm Street. Yes, he actually plays a plantation owner, but we'll get into that a little bit more, a little bit later. The movie starts out basically, Solomon is like, enjoying playing the fiddle. He's approached by the two guys who are con men. His wife tells him that it's hard to make ends meet, blah, 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 blah. And one thing about this movie is that when he goes with his kidnappers, as a ruse, we see them give him something to drink, and then it cuts to the next scene. Now, nowadays, this will be seen as a bit of a cop-out. And it pretty much is a cop-out. Because unlike the movie that just recently came out, from what I heard, it's 12 Years a Slave itself is a lot more graphic. What Solomon Northup's Odyssey does is it doesn't make the nature graphic, but you can feel the oppression and you can feel the soul-suckingness that basically being an African-American slave was at that time. They didn't have to go for the graphic beating or any of the violence that you see, And Gordon Parks actually does an amazing job of setting this atmosphere up. In addition, Gordon Parks does something that's, not only fairly well, but it's actually something that really mirrors what it's like living in the inner city right now. It displays basically it displays how the black community is, because there's a lot of parallels for how slaves had their own community during the slavery period to how, most African American neighborhoods in rural and urban settings are, So when I don't want to get too sociological over here, but when people ask what's one of the problems with black neighborhoods or one of the reasons why there's not enough economic mobility and everything, it is gone back to slavery, because there's a lot of things from slavery that are still prevalent. Not just the owning the people part or the brutality that humans did to other people. It's more of the living environment and the social structure. You see that if you watch this movie, you'll see how that structure is, and you can actually take that and place it to an African or an urban neighborhood or a rural neighborhood with a large minority population. In addition, we got a lot of the interactions with, before I go into the interactions, we got basically the contrast of basically how people in the North were portrayed compared to people in the South. People in the South, they, tended to, this is where you notice how most African Americans have soul food, aka fatback and grits. That's because it was a survival technique. This was the best food that we were able to have, and so that's why it's become part of our diet, which, again, try not to go too sociological over here, but you see that in this movie. In addition, one of the things that people know very well is that basically the clash between other African or Black Americans in society. You got the people that are considered uppity and well-educated, and they tend to not be really liked or not be considered a real African American because they actually look down on others and all. And you got that feel. You got that basically sense of, oh, this guy thinks he's better than us, or this person has no problem doing things to other black people to put them down. So this is an atmosphere that is actually in the world right now, but it originated in the period of times of slavery, which Gordon Parks does an excellent job displaying. The movie itself also has amazing cinematography for such a low budget. Mind you, this movie came out in the mid-'80s, but it didn't even have $1 million budget, you know. Now, I can't get the exact numbers because basically I can't research it, but it is easy to see that this movie is of low quality, yet basically the cinematography was done so well, the clothing was done well, and to top it off, the acting was hit or miss. You could tell who were the seasoned performers here. You could tell that basically Avery Brooks, you could tell that John Saxon, and the original slave owner, William Ford, who I forgot what the actor's name was, you could tell that they are seasoned performers. In addition, you know, we have Art Evans in this movie, another character actor, mainly well known for being the person that helped John McClane out in Die Hard 2, or if you actually remember the 1997 movie Metro, who was actually Eddie Murphy's partner, you know. So we have decent performances and great cinematography, but one thing that's also great is the music. Now the thing is, you know, if you listen to the music, you know, or the musical score, basically, you know, they do an interesting job. They actually play something to give you a sense of danger, but it's not a sense of danger, it's more of a sense of suspense, and they actually play something very uplifting, but with the upliftingness, you still have that tension or that feel of, like, you know, something like it's happiness on the surface, but underneath, there's this eerie, dark undertone about what's happening. And that's one of the great things about, you know, Solomon Northup's Odyssey. It almost every conventional thing that you could think of, it actually flips it upside down, but it delivers it in a way that basically is very, very, one, grounded, two, you know, easier to follow, and three, will give you some sense of pride despite the fact of, like, the harsh atmospheric tones and the tensions that you feel. So, as a movie that, like, I grew up with as a kid, you know, I actually thought that I had the VHS tape, but it got lost in my old place. But neither here or there, you know, great direction, amazing cinematography for a limited budget, decent acting performances, and a great artistic way of shooting and feeling an atmosphere. Everyone, if you haven't been able to check it out, please do, because Solomon Northup's Odyssey is slamming. Have you ever heard of this movie, by the way? Or do you agree or disagree? Please, drop me a comment below, give me a like, follow me on Facebook at Token Dave, or on Twitter at TokenDave80, subscribe, and ring that bell so you know when a new video loads. But until then, this has been Token Dave, a dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by, and I'll catch all of you later.